Well, good morning, golfers. Time for another podcast here. Kevin Haime with son Jake Haime. Better Golf with Kevin and Jake. Great morning.
Great morning.
Great day yesterday. That was a fun day. Wow.
Today feels like sleeping in after the last 4 days.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be doing that at Royal Portrush and in the entire country of Ireland after that Open Championship. It's our Open Championship podcast, special edition here. I'm a little sad that all the majors are done in the books and we're 200 and some days till the Masters, but we'll talk about that later in the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
For now, let's reflect on and teach a little bit based on the Open Championship and Shane Lowry and how he literally dismembered that golf course. It was very analytical. He hit the ball perfectly. He handled his emotions.
I think it was a great example of the right course for the right horse for the right course. Sorry, having a guy who knew how to play that course, had the game for it, took it apart, executed the plan. I mean, it worked perfectly.
Yeah, he wasn't the pick, though, Jake. We had the three Ulstermen and Darren Clarke and McDowell and Rory, who were the only Irishman that anyone was talking about. Shane Lowry, 33rd in the world, has won a World Golf Championship. He really got my attention. I took him seriously after the first couple of days because he had won the Irish Open in 2009 as an amateur. And for someone to do something like that, you could relate it back to your competitive career, and I can do it on mine, to win the Canadian Amateur or the Canadian Open as an amateur. Just imagine the impact and what kind of player you'd need to be to do that. So that really got my attention, and as it turns out, he was somehow able to deal with it. But even he said it was an immense challenge, and he was scared out there. I thought that was the most interesting comment yesterday. After he won, jubilation for his family and friends and all the locals. But he said, he was nervous as heck. It was the hardest round of his life, and he was actually scared out there, whether he could pull it off or not. So quite something.
I think something that was really interesting with him and a couple other plays, including Rory in his press conference after, despite the fact that he missed the cut.
He didn't handle it, yeah.
No, but vulnerability was something that we saw a lot of this week, especially the Irishmen who all were talking about how much this impacted them being vulnerable and talking about their emotions. And one thing I love about what Shane Lowry said was that he didn't see a point in pretending he wasn't nervous. He said, it's out in the open. I'm nervous. I got to deal with it. And, I think sometimes
Rory did the opposite, right? Rory tried to bury it.
At the start, at least, yeah.
Oh, not at the start. He said, it's just another event. I've done my practice round. I'm going home and having dinner with my parents. I'm treating it like just another start. And he tried that psychological strategy. And clearly it didn't work for him. And Shane Lowry kind of embraced the size of the... I mean, I think we have to spend a second to try to help people understand the enormity of that win. Mike Weir almost won the Canadian Open and couldn't get it done. And his inability to do that, I have a lot of empathy for. The guy... It's a very difficult thing to do. But golf in Ireland...
It's woven into the fabric of their culture.
It's like hockey in Canada.
I'd argue
even more
it's bigger than
yeah.
hockey in Canada because a lot of their towns and cities are centered around golf courses. So it's almost integral as a part of their infrastructure, let alone their culture. So, it's like our entire city being built around the hockey rink. Where I think it's, hockey is really important in Canada, football is really important, baseball is really important in the States. But I think when you talk about countries like Scotland and Ireland and England, especially with the longer history of it, golf is so big for them.
Well, certainly everybody, I've been over to Ireland several times. I know you've been over, and you go, like, to go to Lahinch, for example. We saw a great Irish Open there a couple of weeks ago. John Rahm won it.
Yeah, super fun to watch.
When you're there, you get a caddy, and the experience is this wonderful, soulful experience to walk the links with an old curmudgeonly caddy or whatever it is.
That works.
But then you're in the pub that night, and he's at the next table having a pint, and the bartender's talking to him about his day, and then, someone who works in the pro shop is sitting having a bowl of stew in the corner. I mean, everybody and the entire town kind of surrounds the business of golf, but more importantly, the culture of golf, like you say. And it's really something special. There's a complicated dynamic having an Irishman win in Northern Ireland and the history with England and the whole thing, right? It's a little complicated, but I tell you what, they were saying that they're trying to show off the country and show the gentle side of Northern Ireland, and I really want to go. I mean, we may have in the past thought twice about going to Belfast, especially with what happened decades ago, but having seen this week, I think they've done an amazing service to their tourism and just how the whole world will feel about the country. It's a big, big deal here.
It's interesting. I heard people talk about before, and a couple of Northern Irish reporters talking about the reality of the whole Northern Ireland thing. And one of them said something I thought that was very interesting, was that even someone like Rory, who'd be more in the generation than I am, doesn't really think of it the same way as even someone like Graham McDowell, who's only 10 years older than him, would. Because Rory didn't see any of the things as it was happening, right? So I think that for the younger generation, what Shane Lowry said is true, is that they're different countries, but when it comes to golf, they're all Irish. And I think it is a complicated dynamic, but I think it was very cool to see everybody at that golf course, Irish or Northern Irish or anyone, get around Lowry, and he was clearly the favorite. And it is fun to watch when someone's a favorite coming down the stretch and they're roaring for somebody. But, and I don't want to overstate this, I think this could be incredibly good for the relationship. I mean, having the Open come to Northern Ireland and an Irishman winning it.
Needs it though. I think what we learned this week is that, that's all history, that stuff, and I'm not sure that it needs, the politics of it need help. I mean, they embraced Lowry.
No, I totally agree. I guess this is just a good example of that.
Anyway, enough politics. Darren Clarke tees off on the first hole. He's got tears in his eyes. He birdies the first hole. Graham McDowell, was amazing and is good friends with Shane Lowry, and they had a tearful hug at the end.
And Graham played quite well, actually.
They showed themselves well. Rory McIlroy's another conversation. You said, or I said, that his strategy of kind of, it's like any other tournament, backfired a little bit. Choke is a big word, Jake, but, I mean, he didn't handle it.
No, he did. And
well, choke, when we think of choking, we think of someone getting so nervous that they fall apart. And I'm not sure that happened, but he didn't handle his emotions well. Like I said on Montreal radio earlier in the week, on Friday, after he did that, he could hit that fairway with an iron 10,000 times in a row. But when he got on that first tee,
he choked. You're basically describing choking. I mean, I know it's a big word, but frankly, Rory has had a history of choking in majors in the last 5 years. However, I think this maybe is a good moment for him to rally around and realize that he can get around it.
Yeah, well, Shane Lowry did that. He lost at Oakmont by 4 shots and then came back to win, and Adam Scott did the same thing at the Open Championship. There have been a lot of people stumble and get back up. You're right. Mind you could argue the Masters the first time, and, that brutal tee shot on 10 and that ridiculous back 9 could have done that for him already and didn't. But anyway, I find there to be a little bit of silliness to having an out of bounds within the golf course that close to the fairway. I'm not that's the only thing about that golf course that I wasn't in awe of this week.
Yeah, I agree as well, especially the one on the right. I had a bit of a problem with that Ricky hit it into yesterday, because with the wind set up the way that the wind going the way it was yesterday and the course set up the way it was, you almost had to start the ball close to the out of bounds to have it curve back into the fairway.
I really don't know the point. Are those out of bounds there to...
Well, so I know why the out of bounds on the left is there. So Jeff Shackelford actually had an article about it, and he said in the article that it's because when the Open was there last time, they didn't own that strip of land between 1 and 18, so it had to be out of bounds. So this time, as an homage to it and as a solidarity thing, they made it out of bounds again.
Solidarity to what?
The original Open Championship, I guess. They had bought the land since then, but they made it out of bounds. The one on the right, I have no clue why that's out of bounds, apart from making it a challenge.
Maybe they don't own that land. Who knows? But you'd think they moved heaven and earth to get the event there. They could have figured out a way to not do that. Mind you, he tripled 18. No one's talking about that. But coming back into the grandstands with his Irish crowd, and again having to handle the emotions in front of 10,000 people, which he should be able to do because he's won 4 majors, including a U.S. Open by 8. But he triple bogeyed that hole. And he missed that dinky little putt, too. I mean, I know he missed the cut by 1. He played a great round of golf on Friday. But good Lord, even if he quads the first hole and comes in 76, But then missing that little putt and tripling the last hole is just as devastating. And in both times, right, it's right where all that emotion is, near the clubhouse.
Yeah, which is why I say he choked. And I know that's a scary word in sports, and people don't like using it if they don't feel like there's a reason. But I mean, it's what happened, and he recovered from it. And he said in his press conferences after that he was happy with the resilience
we don't know if
he
he's
showed.
Recovered from it.
No, I'm saying he played better the next day. He recovered the next day from that round. And he said, I was happy with the resilience I showed and made an effort of it. And that, to me, that openness and honesty with himself of, I did it, I did choke, but I was resilient afterwards. That's why I think it could be a rallying point for Rory.
We'll see.
And it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Let me tell you where he
got
won't
too
be
big
rallying is Saturday morning. He would have been dumbfounded, and Sunday watching Shane Lowry. I mean, that is his. He owns that land, basically. I mean, he's from Hollywood, just up the road, and he is the golden child of Northern Ireland. And he, had to feel so bad Saturday and Sunday morning, and verging on a depression, I would think. You never know how people act and react to anything, but holy smokes, if I were him sitting there Saturday morning at home going, I cannot believe this happened. I cannot believe I didn't make the cut at least. It was interesting. I didn't see him yesterday. Did you? I don't know whether he flew.
No, I didn't see him
yesterday. I guess he didn't fly by. I thought that was a little off. I like the fact that Ricky Fowler and Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth, all these guys have started hanging around afterwards to congratulate each other. And Brooks Koepka with Tiger at the Tour Championship and all of this stuff, and Tiger with Brooks Koepka at the PGA.
And to Koepka's credit this time too.
Pardon?
And to Koepka's credit, he did this time as well.
Yeah, you'd think Rory would have been there, but I guess he might have thought it'd be too much of a sideshow.
That would make sense to me. If I'm Rory McIlroy and that whole debacle on Friday happened, I would probably say it's better that he's not there. Would have been great if he was.
Away from the moment, maybe. Yeah.
I do think it was, and I think it allowed Graham McDowell to have his moment. Making the cut and having that weekend and being able to play in front of everybody, and then kind of being representative of Northern Ireland in the booth at the end of the round, and being Graham's actual home club too. It was pretty special.
Yeah, his brothers worked on the greens crew for 22 years.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
I mean, you can just imagine. Darren Clark, there was a funny little interview on one of the shows I watched doing prep this week. The bartender at the Harbor Bar, and he knows Darren like a best buddy, and
sure.
Darren stumbled home quite a few nights from there. So it really is. It's almost and what is it, 6,500 people? I mean, think of Carp here in Ottawa, or think of any little country burb. To have those guys from there, an amazing thing, really, if you think about the major championships that have come out of Northern Ireland, and now add Ireland to it with Shane Lowry's win from such a small little country. It just tells you how much it's a part of the fabric of society, and how kids just automatically play golf and are enamored with it, and
how they must be doing something right, because if you look at, between Padraig, McDowell, Darren Clark, Rory, and now Shane, most of their majors have come since 2007, and it's been an incredible run for them.
It has. They've got some good, smart people. They're actually Tristan Mullally, who is the national women's team coach for Canada and has been through the Brooke Henderson years and producing some great young players here in Canada, is from that area, and he was the assistant pro at Portrush for 4 years. And I had him on my radio show last week, and we were chatting about the Harbor Bar and the people there and the Bushmill Inn and, the dynamic around there. But it's a wonderful part of the world. First of all, I would say to all golfers, you have to experience it because you can really connect with it. I have to say, when we landed in Ireland in 2014, Jake, I didn't know what to expect too much of Irish golf. And it, in some ways, at first glance, it underwhelms you a little bit, because when you go to Lahinch, we started at Lahinch, 7 a.m. after a red-eye flight. And the pro shop, there's a young girl behind the counter on a stool, kind of selling knickknacks and just running your credit card through. It doesn't have a majestic feel about it, what you might expect. But the understated part of it, no driving ranges at most of the top courses. They just don't have them. you go up into the clubhouse, and some of the old geezers are up there with their blazers on, eating their bowl of soup, and you know, it's a very different dynamic, right? It's not at first glance the most brilliant, or it doesn't attract you like a bug to a light. But then you play the golf courses, and then you go up and have a chat with the old geezer and tip a pint of Guinness with him, or he buys you a beer or gives you a scone, or you kind of peel away the first couple of layers and you realize, oh boy, this is really special. But it's understated, right?
Sure, I don't care about clubhouses, so I don't know that I even notice that it's understated. I mean, I think a lot of people, especially in North America, they go, look at this clubhouse, and I go, I don't give a damn. Show me the first tee. Like, I want to hit the ball. I wish they had driving ranges in Ireland, frankly, as a guy who likes to warm up. But you're right, it's special. I don't feel underwhelmed going there because all I care about is the golf course.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I just think after waiting a whole life, you're probably spoiled. So you got to go at 22. I waited my whole life to go, and I walked into that clubhouse, and there was a little pro shop with a few sweaters, and it just
sure,
hit me.
I can see that.
It just hit me that I expected. I guess you build it up. It's like St. Andrews. I haven't been to St. Andrews yet, and you expect, the seas to almost part when you wander in there. And
sure, but don't you almost like it better because it doesn't have that stuff?
That's what I'm saying. Once you peel away those layers, it's spectacular. And the people are just down to earth, honest, friendly, accommodating people. They're not in your face. Like when you go down to the States, you go to a Trump place and they got the earpieces in and they're, hello, Mr. Haime, have a nice day. Can I shuttle you over to the range? And there's none of that in Ireland.
No. And don't get me wrong, there's something nice about that occasionally as well. Some of these golf courses that have these big clubhouses and they're gorgeous, and there's value in that as well. I'm not saying that I don't appreciate it when I'm there, but as a general statement, I mean, that's an example of why, to use a parallel in Canada, Cabot is so special, because the golf courses are what matter there. I mean, Cliffs doesn't yet have a clubhouse, right, at the golf course. And I've heard one or two people, here at our facility, I asked them what they thought of Cabot after they go, and they go, the courses were great, but the amenities weren't like what I was looking for, and they were disappointed. And I go, but why does that matter? You're there for the golf course. Like, you're there to play golf. So,
Yes and no, Jake. I think everything's an experience. Like, it's different to watch the Foo Fighters in Madison Square Garden with 20,000 other screaming fans in a light show than in a mud field somewhere. I mean, you may say, no, it isn't. The music's the music.
Sure, no, so hold on. So, yes, you're right if the sound is different. Like, I went to them in Blues Fest last year, and then I went to them in Toronto, and it was better in Toronto because the experience was different. But wouldn't you rather go see Foo Fighters in a small bar and only have 100 people there?
All I'm saying to you is you shouldn't, if the clubhouse is important to them and that experience and the food.
Well, sure, it's all subjective. It's whatever you want. But I guess we're spinning around and we're getting off topic. So it's not
there is no topic.
Not really important whether we think a clubhouse is important or not. All I'm getting at is, to me, the golf is what matters, right? And if you talk about purity of golf and purity of the game, Ireland, I think, what I was surprised about was how good Ireland was. Because I've always heard Scotland is the home of golf. And then when you go to Ireland, and I actually think, based on what we experience in Ireland, that I probably like Irish golf more than I like Scottish golf. With the dunes and the elevation slight differences, the courses aren't quite as flat. There's more elevated greens with runoff around them, so you're truly penalized for a bad shot because you're...
Well, no, you haven't been to Scotland, so be careful.
Sure.
I do think...
That's why I said probably, right?
I do think golf in Scotland's a little flatter.
I'm sure it's incredible as well, right? And I cannot wait till I get to go. But what I didn't realize was how different the two fields would be, because all I've ever heard is how Scotland is, and Ireland is not what I expected when I went there, and I think it's phenomenal. And get back to the Open for a second, I think that Portrush showed that incredibly well. I thought this course was unbelievably good for the Open. I think it's a non-thought that this should be on the Rota now. It's so obvious it's a joke. And I'm already looking forward to the next time they go to Portrush to see what happens.
Yeah, I haven't been to Portrush. The topography changes and everything make it a more majestic experience. Lahinch is a little bit like that. Waterville's a little more, has a little less topography changes to, especially the front nine. But yeah, it's a big part of the intrigue in Ireland. You are right about that. The size of the dunes and everything in Portrush seems like the epitome of that. It just seemed beautiful and up and down and giant dunes and valleys and swales and gorges off greens. And you're totally right about kind of the Donald Ross shapes to the greens, how they funnel off a little bit. Not upside down bowls, but that effect where the fringes kind of bleed away from the greens. And the bunkers as well. I didn't see a ton of people hit into bunkers rolling in, but, in a lot of links golf, and I did notice there, if the ball's running to the bunker, it veers into the bunker.
Yeah, there's not as many bunkers at Portrush, so I think that's why we didn't see a lot of them, but you're right.
The design is to kind of grab the ball.
Yeah.
Right. Listen, links golf, Ireland is spectacular. I'm sure Scotland is spectacular as well. To me, it's such a purer way to play the game. It's such a more interesting way to play the game. The game is really about controlling your golf ball, controlling your body to, in essence, control the trajectory, distance, and spin on your ball. That's
Yes.
what the game's about. It's not about how far can I hit it. It's not about shooting darts and watching your ball spin back off the green, to me. To me, it's about controlling exactly what your club does to control what your ball does. And then it's about course management and planning and strategizing. And the links game is so much more interesting. I mean, basically, at many country clubs in North America, you grab your driver almost on every tee. You just automatically pull it out of the golf bag. And then you get there and you pace off from the 100 or the 150 and you choose your iron and you hit to the middle of the green or maybe go after a pin a little bit if you're feeling good. And that's the game. In Ireland, you could hit 7 different clubs off different tees depending on wind conditions and where those bunkers are and how firm the ground is and how the topography changes. And each hole is a little bit more like its own little game that requires a lot of thought and attention. And it makes the game so much more interesting.
It does.
I love links golf.
I do as well, but again, it's mostly because of those, in my opinion, mostly because of those collection areas around the green, right? You see, for example, this week, a lot of these guys hitting what looks like good shots, but they're truly average to good shots, and they're not in the right spot, so they bounce off the green and go into these collection areas that you then have an incredibly awkward pitch or chip or putt or whatever shot you like to hit out of that area, and it actually penalizes you for not hitting it where you're supposed to. Whereas on most target golf, the difference is that there's thick rough right around the green. So if you miss the green, you just wind up in the rough. There's no chance that you trundle off way farther down into the stuff you really don't want to be in.
Although I think, do you not think, Jake, in the last little while they've started to do more collection areas and things?
It's trending back in that direction because I think as social media has become more prevalent and people have become more worldly in their golf and they see the golf world as a whole thing, not just what's in front of them, that people are coming back to what you're saying, which is links golf is true strategy, that it allows them to play golf as it originally intended. As the equipment and the ball have gotten so good that this still is how we make courses challenging for the best players, is we make them have to strategically play around the golf course. And I think that that's making a lot of courses in North America realize that that's a great way to do it. And even if you have a more traditional landscape of North America, the collection areas penalize average shots like they're supposed to and really, really identify the best shots into the greens.
Yeah, it's not hard to figure out how to hit a ball out of long rough either. For a while, it might have been a confusing thing to have that spinachy stuff around the greens, but now you just blast it like a bunker shot. Open your club face, hit 2 inches behind the ball pops onto the green.
Well, we have the tools to do it, and at least on the PGA Tour, the guys are strong enough that from 150 yards, the rough isn't as relevant as it used to be, right?
Yeah. But I think so from that perspective, the collection areas, you're right. But, to be 70 yards from a green and not be able to hit the lob wedge because the green's elevated, it rolls off from behind and you're downwind, there's no way. You've got to, and let's say there's a bunker between you and the hole, so you can't putt it. Now you've got to figure out, well, okay, if I hit a little 8-iron and I land it 32 yards short of the green, it's going to catch that crest on the right and curve back towards the middle of the green, and that's the shot I'm trying to hit. So you have to get thoroughly engaged with where do I land it, what exactly is going to happen to the ball as it rolls 30 yards along the ground, which requires so much more thought than grabbing my 60-degree wedge and trying to land it 2 feet from the hole. So, for so many reasons, it's so much more interesting. I would also say that there's a reason why so many Euros have been so great on the world stage as of late, and all the Irishmen are winning some of the majors. I know we've got Tiger and Phil, and we've got great players in North America, but
Of course.
If you look at the Englishmen in Rose, and you look at the Spaniards, and all of whom grew up kind of in links conditions. They deal with the weather. They don't get as flustered in the weather. See J.B. Holmes yesterday, or pick your player. And they also, I think they really understand flighting the golf ball better. It's not just bomb and gouge. It's hit it at this height, hit it at this height, hit it at this height, and control the way you flight your golf ball. So as you're learning, you're forced to, because of 70-kilometer-an-hour winds and elevated greens and super tough conditions, to really control your golf ball. And I think that just runs its way all through your career until you're at PGA Tour level, and then you've just got more kind of arrows in your quiver, because you've grown up having to hit more different shots and controlling your body more.
And it's a skill that doesn't only serve you in those golf courses, right? I think it's really easy for people to hear, these Euros hit it flat, so when you're at the British Open, they're going to hit it good. I think we hear that a lot, right? And I think some people brush that off as, well, if I ever play in Europe, I might need to do that, but I don't play in Europe. I play in Canada, or I play in the United States. The thing to understand is that ability to flight the ball differently and control your trajectory and land it to the right spot of the green and have a ball react the way you want to is just as important in target golf as it is in links golf. It's just less obvious, right? And that's why a lot of these guys who are the best ball strikers on tours, especially an iron perspective, are a lot of these European players. Think Tommy Fleetwood, think Justin Rose. I think that...
I don't think it's just as important, though. I don't think you need as many shots to play, whatever, Springfield Country Club.
Sure, okay.
You just don't need as many shots. Yep. You don't have to land it 60 yards short and imagine what will happen.
No, you're right. You need to flight. You need to control the flight, but you only need to control the ball a certain ways, which is fair.
In both types of play, you need to hit the ball through the right window at the right elevation with the right spin to have it do what you want when it lands.
Yes.
But there's so many more ways to do it, is my point. You've probably tried to hit a lot more interesting shots and been forced to teach yourself. Frankly, I've been forced to teach yourself. The other thing I will finish on that, and I want to talk about how to hit those shots, but the last thing I'd like to say about links golf is hitting the ball off the turf is literally gratifying. The firmness of the turf,
different,
and the fescue grass, the bounce on your golf club and your club fitting really matters, because there's a thumpiness and a thickness and a solidness to the impact that you don't feel off bent grass or on sandy soils down south, or off rich earth here in the Northeast. It's got a different feel to it, and it's really, if you're swinging well, it actually helps you a little bit. And like I hit my best long irons when I'm in Ireland or at Cabot Links. I hit long irons better than I do here in North America. I don't know what it is about my impact position that allows for that, but I find it much easier to hit long irons off fescue and links turf. I really enjoy it. Yeah, I don't know what it is, Jake. The bounce on my club and my angle must be just right, that it just feels right off that kind of consistency of turf.
So you grew up in the wrong spot.
Yeah, no, we're fine here. But anyway, it's a different game on so many perspectives, and it's so much fun, right? You and I like to go to Cabot Links as often as we can and experience it here in Canada, and it's the same type of thing where you've got, where do I land my ball?
Yeah, it feels shockingly similar when you're there, and I think if anybody listening can get to a course that plays like a true links golf course, I think it'll be eye-opening in terms of your golf. And I actually think that I became a better player after we went to Ireland, clearly from the fact that it drilled into my head that this stuff's important.
Yeah.
I hit the ball quite high as a general statement. I hit the ball reasonably far.
I remember the first time in Ireland. Oh my God, you could not Deal with it.
Yeah, the first round was fine. Weather was good. I was fine. Second round, weather was fine. I was great. Played fantastically. Third round we went to, it was Waterville. I remember it was the fourth hole. And there was a 60-yard fairway, which seemed like an open airport landing strip. It was so easy to hit. But the wind was blowing across at like 60 miles an hour from right to left. And so I remember aiming at the right rough, trying to hit a fade. And I hit the ball, and I hit it as clean as I could. And the ball flew 70 yards almost into the left fescue. And I remember turning to you and go, I don't know how to hit this shot.
Yeah.
I need help. I can't.
And
I
we
don't know how to do
actually
it.
stopped. I remember that moment. We actually stopped and teed a couple of balls down. And, that's certainly nothing bad about you as a golfer in North America.
I didn't know
not
better.
knowing how to punch or down flight a
driver. I just didn't know, right? And, I think that
Well, that goes to show you then. So every Euro who grew up who needed to learn that has one more shot than you. So that's another kind of confirmation of the fact that some of these European players.
Absolutely. But the takeaway for North American golfers is that after I had that, I had this epiphanous moment of, I need to be able to hit these shots, not only when I'm here, but if I could do that, how much would that help me on certain holes here too?
Sure.
Right? And I really do credit that to not only swing changes I've made, that have made me a better golfer and more reliable, having less rotation in my face, things I'm sure we'll talk about as we get to fighting the golf ball, but having the tools in the toolbox make you a more sophisticated golfer no matter where you're playing. So I think, again, it's easy for people to hear golf pros talk about when we went to Ireland, it was so cool. We flighted the ball this way, you get creative. But some golfers will never go to Ireland, right? And they go, well, why does that matter for me in Canada? Or why does that matter for me in name your place in the States, right? The Northeast or wherever you're playing golf. And I think if you realize that the tenets of this also are good here, not only in the weather, but all the time, then it will make you a better player.
Of course. Okay, so flighting the ball down. Let's talk about that a little bit. Interesting. I did a little feature on the radio talking about this, and I think most people think you got to play the ball back to hit the ball lower.
Typically, I think that's what most people would assume.
Yeah, that you have to hit down on it, almost like a chip shot to hit it low. But that's really not the best way to hit the golf ball. First of all, three different things can happen if you play the ball back in your stance. Number one is you'll adjust to that and hang back on your back leg and hit a weak kind of flippy shot, which, of course, is bad. Number two, you can hit it too high on the face.
Very easily, yeah.
Yeah. And then number three, you can just kind of dig into the turf and just hit mishits and even a fat shot because you need bounce on your golf club to move through. The real secret to hitting the shot, I actually have some of my newer golfers move the ball more forward a couple of inches, and they have to chase it. And by chasing it, I mean they got to move laterally down through the shot to keep their club head low enough to hit it. And in doing that, the hands kind of lead a little bit, and you just kind of instinctively hold off the face into impact because if you release the club and let it swing up, you're going to top or thin the shot.
Well, and it keeps the face more square while reducing loft, which is really the secret, right? One of the problems with hitting down on the golf ball is that typically affects your angle of attack, right? It makes you hit more down on the golf ball by putting the golf ball farther back in your stance. But despite the fact that does reduce loft, which is what you're looking to do, it also shoots the ball into the ground. So you're not hitting the ball with the proper impact conditions, despite the fact that you are doing what you are trying to do by taking loft off the club.
It depends how that happens, Jake. But, I mean, different things can happen. With a long iron, you can, hit it way too low and you squeeze against the turf and it comes out ugly. With a higher lofted club, it might spin up in the air and you just don't want to hit a golf club with a de-lofted face and a steep angle of attack. We've learned over the years that spinning shots has nothing to do with hitting down on it.
No.
That might surprise a lot of listeners, but you spin a golf ball by hitting it solidly and squarely, the right path and the right face angle, and a little bit of a downward hit, a few degrees, no more than, 5 is considered super steep. Let's get back to our shot, though. By forcing yourself to chase the ball, you hit it kind of like I visualize Lee Trevino, how he chased it, and Paul Azinger. The legs move forward. Well, in Azinger's case, in Trevino, he rotated through the ball a bit, but the arms kind of guide the club into the ball, and your face stays square a long time. You're right, there's less rotation in it. It's really a good thing to do. Tiger Stinger, if you watch carefully, you're the first really one who brought this to my attention a few years ago with a video. You got this great video from the Open Championship. And his golf ball is not back when he hits that stinger.
No,
and that would
exactly
surprise
the same
a lot
position.
of listeners.
It's exactly the same position. And I think what I was getting at with the angle of attack comment is this, that you can reduce loft by increasing your angle of attack, or I guess hitting more down on the golf ball. But really, that's not the only way to reduce loft, right? Dynamic loft at the golf ball at impact is really what we're talking about
It's the
here.
worst way to reduce it.
Exactly. So if you keep your dynamic loft down, you make sure you don't have a lot of loft at impact, the ball will go low. But by putting the ball farther up in your stance and keeping your hands forward as you're describing, that reduces dynamic loft while still keeping the face square and creating proper impact conditions. So Tiger puts the ball farther up in his stance and then leads his hands more and feels like he finishes lower, chasing through the golf ball, like you were talking about.
Any bump and run, chip shot, any shot, punch shot, anything you want to hit low, you've got to hold the face off. You cannot allow the club face to finish high. And, you know, we have a saying that's a pretty obvious one, but high finish, high shot, low finish, low shot. If you hold off the release, just keep your hands moving and have your hands get through impact before the club face, you'll hit it lower.
And that's also why they go so straight, is because your ball's in the normal position and your hands being forward.
There's less rotation.
There's less rotation. The face is so square that you hit these solid, hard shots. And that's why they still go so long despite being low, and they typically are very straight, penetrating golf shots.
I would ask everybody listening to hit a few golf balls with a mid-iron. Try to hold off the finish and lead with the hands. Get your weight onto that lead leg and stay low through impact to try to hit the ball a little lower. Then I'd ask them to move the ball almost off their front toe and try to hit a few shots. For people who hit it fat, this is one of those counterintuitive things in golf. When people hit it fat, they move the ball back in their stance. But moving the ball back in their stance forces them to hang back.
Exacerbates
and it makes it
the
worse.
problem.
Yeah, it makes it worse. The best thing to do with someone who hits the ball fat is move the ball way forward. And that forces them, if they want to make any kind of impact, to keep moving and stay low down through the golf shot, and then they'll end up hitting the ball better. Their weight will move onto that lead leg. Their hips will rotate through. They'll square the club. The ball forward drill, if you will, not only to hit punch shots, but also to just, you know, get your weight through and feel what impact should feel like, is a really great drill.
The other thing to say, too, just as a general statement, is this is the trend we're teaching in general is going to, right? Reducing face rotation, making sure your body does more of the turning, and you don't flip your hands as much at impact to make it more reliable, especially on the pro front, is where the kind of teaching is going as well, and we're realizing that this is a better way to do it. So trying that even just to work on your golf game in general, not only low shots, is probably a good idea for you.
Yeah, great ball strikers are really solid through impact, and when you look at, they replane the shaft is what is a term we use, meaning that their hands are at the same level from down the line, from, you know, the behind view at impact as it was at address.
Yes.
And Ray Floyd comes to mind. Lee Trevino comes to mind. Sergio Garcia comes to mind. Nick Price comes to mind.
Tommy Fleetwood now.
Slow motion video I've studied where the hands are at the exact same level in relation to golf shaft angle at impact and address. And it's a very consistent way to hit the ball. And you have to have a rotary body motion for the most part, but the arms don't have a lot of rotation and release in them through impact. And you know, Jake, we have Gears 3D motion capture here, and we look at grip roll. I guess grip roll is the way they say it, although I'm looking at the face roll. But when you study grip roll and how the wrists and hands and the golf club work through impact, 1,000 degrees per sec.
1,000 degrees per second of rotation
low, and 2,000 degrees per second is high. And I think when people work on, you know, it always kind of, it's like my ears listening to nails on a chalkboard when people say, I'm trying to release it and hit it with my right hand and square the club with my hands. And I'm thinking, that's not really a great way to play golf. You're better to keep really quiet arms, wrists, and hands through impact and keep your golf club as neutral as possible and allow your body rotation. Look at Dustin Johnson. He's the ultimate example, because as close as his club face is at the top of his swing, that guy should hook everything. But because he rotates so well, there's no urge to pull his arms around. And so he can allow his arms to stay much more square through impact. And he never hits a hook. He hits a fade.
Yeah, well, and think of someone like Tommy Fleetwood as well, right? Azinger referred to it yesterday as he always looks like he's hitting a go-to shot, having that little held-off finish.
By the way, do you ever watch Azinger play when he was young? You should look at some videos.
I've looked at it going back.
He was the same type of player. Yeah. He really hung on. He was a good ball striker.
But, these guys like Fleetwood who are great ball strikers and then have that held-off finish, what he's trying to do is he's trying to make sure that his face stays as square as possible and he doesn't turn it over. So, as you said, grip roll, how much your hands are rolling over through impact, directly correlates to closure rate of the face, how fast the face closes. And the more you close the face quickly through the golf ball, the more it's like a cowboy walking through a saloon door that's moving too quickly. Occasionally, you're going to be okay, and occasionally, you're going to get your butt hit and fall over. And, as you say, people who try to hit it with their hand are really increasing their grip roll and really, therefore, increasing the closure rate, and it's just risky golf. So the more that you can not necessarily try to hit low shots all the time, but feel like you're chasing the ball and having your hands be quiet through impact, the better you'll be. The best quote of that is Johnny Miller used to say he felt like he played his best golf when his hands didn't exist.
Yeah.
And,
a good book, too, to read and understand, The 8-Step Swing by Jim McLean. Jim was one of the great teachers in North America, and he talked about that. He felt like his arms and hands do nothing as he hits his best golf shots. So he played at Houston with Bruce Lidsky. He was a great player, and he always said that. Last thing on Tommy Fleetwood, the last little tip we'll give people is stick your finish and make it the same every time.
Absolutely.
Think about, let's shrink those backswings a little bit, think about balance and control in the backswing. And if you can really stick your finish every single time and move into the golf ball with the exact same rhythm and body energy, you can really become a better player. So stick your finish. I used to have my pupils imagine Nick Price back in the day, who always stuck his finish, and that club was dead horizontal to the ground at the end. Tommy Fleetwood's a great one now, especially if we're teaching people to control ball flight.
Yeah, for sure he is.
In that he holds that off, and he just, every single finish with his wrists and hands and club shaft angle looks exactly the same, and I love it.
Really funny, early this season I had a lady, her husband played golf. She's starting to come for lessons. She's really done quite well. She's taken to it hard. She's gotten very, very competitive very quickly. But about her third lesson, after talking about good setup and trying to get her weight to her front foot and finish better, she's hitting golf balls and she's not finishing fully. And I look at her and go, I know you can do this. Why aren't you finishing 100%? Like, I can almost tell you're stopping yourself from holding it and coming down right away. And she goes, well, I'm not a very good golfer yet. I don't want to be ostentatious. So she's not finishing because she doesn't want to show off. And I just laughed. And I said, that's the opposite of how it works.
That's a weird comment.
I said, well, I think people think that we're posing when we finish, right? You're holding the pose to stick the landing like a gymnast and show off. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. The reason why good players hold their finish is because, like you said, they're sticking their landing, they're practicing their balance, they're making sure they have a consistent position.
Well, and it's the natural end to proper energy flow.
And if you're going to watch the ball, you might as well watch it from that spot, right? So I jokingly said, look, the thing that's more showing off is when you do it, you hold your finish for a second, then you pick the tee up because, the ball's good, you don't have to watch it. So if anything, holding your finish makes you a better golfer.
Well, of course it does, because it proves you're in balance. And it, I have a hard time stopping sooner because there's so much momentum and unwinding that I can't even stop if I wanted to, unless you really make a concerted effort to hold everything off. So there's a lot of reasons why the finish, of course, is the finish. It's the end of the motion it's just a natural place.
Yeah,
but holding it off a little bit can definitely hit those lower shots and can definitely give you a sense of more ball control for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get back to the Open. Let's do
it.
So Tommy Fleetwood.
Yes, let's talk about him.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, so, I think looking at it, that's what really struggled on the last day, right? I think, a lot of people are going to blame his putting because he didn't make a bunch of putts and it was obvious coming down the stretch and early in the round. But what really was different was his ball striking. So I wrote some notes down to make sure I got the numbers right. The first 2 days, he hit 64.29% of fairways and he hit 69.44% of greens, which both were competitive, better than the average. Yep. The last day, he was 42.86 and 44.44.
Yeah, now, Jake, the wind and the rain,
of course,
it's a little unfair to say, oh, he was 70%, now he's 40, he choked.
I didn't say he choked. I said that was the difference maker, though. Everyone's going to blame the putting, and the weather had a big part of it, but what was really different different was the fact that he wasn't hitting the greens, and so he was making it much harder on himself.
Yeah, for
Now,
sure.
he also didn't putt fantastically.
I mean, Shane Lowry deserves a heck of a lot of credit because, I mean, he shot one over. No one would have beat him anyway with his lead that he had. In that weather, he played amazingly well. Only Tony Finau beat him by a shot. That was it of all those finishers, and it was a crazy number. I don't know if you looked up that stat, but the last 4 groups were something like, or the last 8 groups were something like 80 over or something.
I think it was the last, yeah.
It was a very difficult day. I did think, though, the putting, Jake, with Fleetwood, those first few holes. I mean, on the first hole, he's putting for birdie, and Shane's putting for bogey, and if he makes and Shane misses, it's a one-shot tournament. I mean, you know, that was a big deal. And then he missed a couple more early.
I agree with that.
And golf is a momentum sport like any sport, you know, a hockey game or a basketball game. One team gets rolling and the other. And it's got to take a little bit of emotional wind out of your sails when you think, God, if I'd have made that putt and he'd missed that putt, I'd be one up right now. And in fact, that would have been true. I mean, he could have really started something magical. He had the opportunity on those first 5 holes, and the putter let him down on those holes.
You're right, and it did look, as a general statement throughout the day, that he didn't look like himself on the greens, that he wasn't putting with confidence, and that's a little bit where I wonder if both nerves and then the wind got to him. Because one thing you heard Graham McDowell say late in the round when he was in the booth was that one of the hardest things to do when it's that windy is be assertive in your putting, because you know the wind's going to do something to the ball when you putt. So it's hard to judge where you think you should put the brake.
Still, too, right?
Absolutely, it is. And one of the things that Azinger said that I actually think was right on point was that one of the most impressive things that Shane Lowry did all day was he got every putt to the hole under pressure. He wasn't leaving them short and playing conservative and scared. And he made many of them because he hit those assertive putts. So it wasn't as affected by the conditions.
Yeah, you know, I hate to say this, but I really enjoyed Azinger this weekend.
I thought he was great.
The hyperbole has got to stop.
Yep, but it's getting better.
This is the shot of his life, and this is heroic, and all of that stuff is such garbage, and he still does too much of it.
I think he's learning, though.
But you could really tell he knows how to play the game, and he's an elite ball striker, because he was saying very insightful things about playing in the wind and the way the ball spins and the tendencies when certain winds are certain ways. And I guess any tour pro could discuss that knowledgeably. They're all great golfers. But Azinger really had good insights, I thought, on the weekend. And good on him. I thought it was his best performance yet.
I did too. I think he's getting better as he goes. Right? I think it was really easy really quickly when he first replaced Johnny Miller to give him a hard time. Especially with the hyperbole, I think that has been a little ridiculous.
Man,
but I think as he's doing more and more of these events and doing more and more coverage, he's getting more practiced clearly, and I think he's learning his role a little bit differently.
Brooks Koepka.
Yes, Brooks Koepka.
The best year since Tiger in 2000. Are you that impressed with him?
I don't think it is the best year since Tiger in 2000. I think Jordan Spieth was better in 2015. I think Jordan Spieth won 2 majors. He was 54 under in the majors. Brooks Koepka was 36 under. I think Spieth had a better year that year.
Well, there's no think. You just gave us the stats. But I'm just saying in general, thoughts on Brooks Koepka?
I think it's an unbelievable run. If you make it maybe a 2-year stretch, then I start to agree with that, and that makes it even more impressive.
He's hard to like, though, isn't he?
I
mean,
in
I'm
certain ways,
that
yeah.
more than anything. What do you think
ways.
of Brooks Koepka? You know, those comments he made, I think it was on Thursday or Wednesday. First of all, he says, no one's hitting it better than me. He's unapologetic,
which was
about
false,
everything.
which was wrong, by the way.
I like his sense of self-confidence. I
think that's great.
I don't even mind a little bit of arrogance if you can follow it up. But, I mean, he's hard to like because he says things like, if you don't see me on TV playing, I'm not playing. And, you know, I don't really care about average events. And then he's going to show up at everyone's tournament and wondering why they're all not giving him standing ovations when he shows up at the smaller events. And he called out J.B. Holmes, which, hey, he did us a favor. Thanks, Brooks, because more powerful people in the game have to
see. I like that about him. What I like, and this is why I'm conflicted.
You like his honesty? Or?
I love his honesty, and I love his honesty. I love that he says what he thinks, and that a lot of the time, actually, it's the stuff he's saying is quite reasonable. What I don't like is what you're getting at with that too cool for school mentality that I don't know why he says it. We've discussed this before, but
is it arrogance if you deliver when you say something?
No.
Like, I'm the best player here, I can win majors, and then he wins 4 of them.
confidence and arrogance. The line is whether you can back it up, right? You could argue Tiger was arrogant as a kid. There was that.
He's still arrogant. Likability is not up there. Shane Lowry is likable and honest and vulnerable, and that's what we love about the weekend, right?
Yeah,
I don't know about
for sure.
Shane Lowry. I don't love Shane Lowry yet. I don't know enough about him, but he seems like such a good guy. Small town values, a family guy. He's going to his parents with the jug. He's all excited when
It's
he's
part of
talking
what we love
that.
about Rory. It's part of what we love about Rory
too.
Is that Rory, especially considering he's one of the best
It's a
players on the planet.
likability factor, and it is based on failure. We'll like Rory even more now that he's stumbled again. Vulnerability, likability, honesty with emotions, and Brooks is none of that. Brooks is too cool for school, right?
So where I appreciate the honesty is where we're getting at with the vulnerability. He's not a vulnerable person, and not everybody needs to be. Not everybody needs to share every emotion.
You're right.
But what I don't like is that he almost overcorrects in the other direction, where maybe he does feel that way, but I'd be shocked if he does feel that way in real life.
He is not going to have a long, successful career if he really doesn't practice and just shows up for events. That can work when you're on, and we've all had 3-week stretches where. Even a year where you play really great and it seems a little easier. Golf is just not that way, and the golf gods are going to get him, because if he's not practicing and not even caring too much about anything, if it's not a major, I know he's won 4, he's going in the Hall of Fame, but he's not going to be a 2-decade superstar. You have to work hard to achieve things in life. It's one of my most admirable things about Tiger Woods. He's still, although this was kind of weird, he said, I went on vacation, I just want to go home. I'm like, who is this guy?
I think Tiger's still coming off the Masters win, frankly.
Yeah, but Tiger is still all about performance.
Yeah, for sure he is.
And it's so rare. But you got to work hard. That's why it's so hard to do, because you've got to be incredibly talented, incredibly dedicated and driven. I even admire that about Phil Mickelson. Mickelson, as stupid as it was to lose 15 pounds the week before the Open,
he's
some
trying
kind of a crazy trend. He'll do anything to save half a shot and to figure it out.
Totally
right?
agree.
To the point of craziness. No driver in the bag, 2 drivers in the bag, juice cleanse, whatever. But I at least admire the fact that he is all in. He's leaving it out there. And that whole part of Brooks's persona is just bad.
Yeah, golf, no matter what level you're at, whether you're a 30 handicap or Brooks Koepka, golf ebbs and flows, right? You have high points and low points.
For sure.
This is clearly a high point, and the fact that it's a several-year run suggests to us that he's the real deal, and it's not only a peak, it's going to be a trend, but he won't always be this good. And I think what's going to be really interesting is in 5 years' time, if Brooks is taking that attitude, what that looks like. If he is still doing this in 5 years and coming top 5 in every major, well, then you have to start talking generational talent and who is this guy?
Yeah.
But what's really interesting to me is everyone's talking now about Rory, how he's almost done in a way. No,
I don't think everybody's saying that.
Well, some people are saying he's
in a drought for sure.
Sure. So I'll put it this way. Maybe that's too dramatic a point, but I've heard a lot of people say that Brooks is the guy that we thought Rory was, right? Brooks is killing everybody, and we thought Rory was that. Except Rory won 4 majors in 3 years.
Yeah, he already did it.
And now it's just 5 years later. He hasn't done it in a while, and we're forgetting about it.
How about Jordan Spieth? You just said he had a better year than Brooks in 2015, which he did. But, I mean, he's proving to us again that it's really hard to stay magical and stay in that zone for a long time.
Well, and I think here's the difference potentially between Jordan Spieth and Brooks Koepka, is that Jordan Spieth's fundamentals aren't as strong as Koepka's are, and he relied too much on the fact that he
short game and course management.
And his ball striking, by the way, on the irons was fantastic.
I gotta say something.
I know what you're gonna say, and this is what I'm getting at too. His setup is not good.
I tweeted that out yesterday, and I had someone actually. I'll just send the person to our podcast here to explain it. But Cameron McCormick, I'm sure, is a really good teacher. But
I'm sure he is.
How he can let this starting position happen. First of all, I've seen his width of stance change every time I see him over a ball. If you look at Tiger Woods, He's never changed his setup.
I've heard
he looks
Jordan
exactly the same for 22 years.
I've heard Jordan Spieth say in an interview that the most impressive thing about Tiger, apart from the fact that he always got it done, was that his fundamentals have been the same for 40 years.
Oh my God! I looked at Jordan Spieth the other day. He had such a wide stance. I know he was probably trying to knock the ball down and keep a stable lower body, but it was so wide it was ridiculous. His front foot is pigeon-toed. He's got not very good footwork during his swing. But most importantly, his lines over the golf ball are atrocious.
Agreed.
His right hip rides way up. He's almost got a reverse spine tilt at address. His lower body, his pelvic center doesn't line up with his chest center.
Well, and I think that's what happens. So for people to understand what we're saying his back hip is tilted up by quite a bit, and then his back shoulder's tilted down quite a bit to make it look proper. But that means that your pelvis is angled towards the golf ball, and then your spine is overly tilted away from the golf ball. So all of a sudden, your body lines are crisscrossed. And that means that they're probably not going to turn the way you want them because they're going to have to either return to center independently.
Jake. I mean, with our high performance kids, I get them in front of a mirror, and if they don't look great to start their swing, good luck. Now, listen, you don't want to be some kind of a teacher who teaches everyone to be exactly the same.
No.
But I think when it comes to lining up your body properly, every weightlifter looks the same before they grab the bar. You've got to be balanced, strong, square. You know, these things are givens. And he doesn't look square either. A lot of times his right arm looks high. His grip is pretty weak. I mean, if I graded his starting position, I'd give it a C.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even close. It's not like, ooh, he's slipping. This is a little bit off.
Well, and I think your other point that's even more important is that it's inconsistent, right? The thing that really, really floors me as a pretty good golfer and a golf teacher is that consistent setup comes from consistent, or I'm sorry, let me go back to that. Consistent setup inspires consistent results. If you set up the same every time, it's easier to create consistent ball plate position, therefore easier to hit the ball the same every time at impact.
Well, how do you swing the same if you're standing different all the time?
Basically, that's what we're saying.
I just said it a lot more succinctly than you did.
Thank you for that. That was helpful. Apparently, I can't speak today, but generally, if you're different every time, it's going to be hard to hit the ball. Then you watch Jordan over this championship, and he's missing right, he's missing left, he's missing all over the place. You know.
Yeah, I just,
it's hard to believe that working that wouldn't help
me because, I was a national teacher of the year here in Canada. I've never brought a tour pro along. I don't know how relevant that is to what you know about the swing, or we have a different service. We're in the trenches with all the 90 shooters day after day. That's what we do for a living. If you choose to chase the tour and work with more elite players, I'm not sure it makes you better, although there's a perception in the public that it does.
For sure there is.
So I'm always reluctant if a guy brings a guy to world number one and makes him an icon in golf. Clearly, he's a great teacher. I just look at Jordan Spieth over the ball and I go, come on, man. Like, the weak grip, acceptable if that works with your swing motion. The wide stance, if that works with the way your pelvis and your rotation and your thrust move in golf, you can stay with that, but let's keep it the same all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But arms out of alignment, right hip riding up, not in perfect balance. I mean, he's got to have force plates. He's got to have high-speed video. He's got to have mirrors. He's got to have 3D motion capture, all available to him. How does Jordan not look at some of the lines and say, ooh, that doesn't really look like anybody else? And I guess there's the old swing your swing mentality that you can have anything work if you do it all the time. And I suppose that's right, but
especially
I just think he looks bad over the ball.
But especially when his driver's so bad. I mean, the counterpoint to everything we're saying is that Jordan Spieth in 2015 was number one in strokes gained approach with his irons. I mean, unbelievable iron play, right? So clearly whatever he's doing...
Was it as bad back then? Was his starting position...
Yeah, it's exactly the same. You look at a video, it's exactly the same as it's always been,
right? His right hip was that high up, and yeah.
I
don't remember it being this bad looking. Maybe he's just hitting bad shots and swinging poorly. So I'm kind of subconsciously saying, well, his setup looks even worse now. Maybe
paying attention to it more probably too, right? When he's hitting good shots, you're less likely to pay attention to the mistakes.
I always have said about him, though, like that guy... He gets it done. Remember the World Golf Championship video we got of his footwork with the driver? Yep. And I was like, oh, good Lord.
Yeah, so
I'll tell you, he can get the ball in the hole, though. The guy knows how to get the ball in the hole.
Absolutely, right? So clearly whatever he's doing works for his irons when he's on. His wedge play is incredible. His putting is incredible. But he's never been great with the driver. So especially considering you look at a tournament like this week where the thing that really held him back was he couldn't hit a bloody fairway. So he was always playing from the thick stuff. He had no chance.
And still was on the leaderboard.
At some point, you'd figure he'd look at himself and go, look, these are pretty fundamental things I could fix that would probably help my driving. Maybe I should at least try it. Instead of working on...
Can you believe that he and Cameron Smith haven't had that conversation?
Cameron McCormick. No.
Cameron Smith played well.
We
By
don't
the
know
way, I picked him. He played pretty well.
We don't know that they haven't had the conversation either, right? Maybe they had the conversation and then they felt like Jordan was better in that position. But you're right, as a golf teacher, it's hard to believe that isn't something that they could fix pretty simply to help his driving.
Tiger and Phil. I mean, the Tiger thing's a weird one.
Tiger thing's a little weird. You know, I'm the more I think about it and the more that I watch him have these
he's got to be hurting.
Results,
he's got to be hurting, Jake.
And the weather must be a bigger factor than we would have normally imagined.
Well, his back's,
right?
I mean, he's got a fused back, and he was almost in traction. So I guess none of us should be surprised. We watched him play at the PGA. We watched him win the Tour Championship. We watched him win the Masters, and we're like, Tiger's back. Clearly, this could be more of a special treat for us, what happened at the Masters, than a second surge of Tiger. He only played once in between all the majors this year, which, by the way, I don't like the new schedule now that it's over. I know I liked it in March when we had the Players' Championship, but I can't believe it's over. It's the middle of July, and the season's over. But he only played in one event. I think he made a big mistake with his schedule. You know, if you're... I know he wants to go to all the majors, but if you're that hurt or whatever's going on that you can't even play in between them, they're almost a waste of time. You are not going to have zero reps.
Do you give no credit to what I'm getting at with the weather thing? Do you not think that's a big factor here? Like, you look at the events we're talking about. PGA last year, they were changing shirts. It was so hot. Atlanta, hot. Augusta, hot.
Yeah, I get
Played bad at the Ryder Cup.
I get
Played bad. Like, there clearly is something there. And
yeah, well, his back, I'm
if
sure,
this had been 40
tighter
degrees warmer,
and
do
his
you not...
mobility is worse. I do think it matters. But it wasn't cold at Muirfield. It wasn't cold at events between the majors, and he didn't go to them. Like, what I'm saying is, you know, those are two different arguments. Is he the Tiger he used to be? No. Does the cold affect him more than the hot? Yes, because of his back and flexibility and age, and although he's only 43, for God's sake. But he still mishandled his schedule. I mean, he's either really hurt.
I know, but what I'm saying is that might be an unfair statement to make this year. What I want to see is if he had the schedule when it wasn't cold every tournament.
No, but I'm saying it wasn't cold in the tournaments he should have played between the
majors. I get
majors.
it, but we're talking it based on his performance in the majors. You can't talk about whether it was the right play on events he didn't play in. You can say in the majors he underperformed.
No, but you can. I'm saying my point is he mishandled his schedule this year, unless he's really, really hurt and just can't tee it up more than 6 times a year. And if that's the case, we may never see him win again.
Sure. I don't disagree with that point. My only thing is that that statement ignores the variable that the weather could be a big factor here, right?
Yeah, I think I'm really tired of. He's even making fun of it with that imitator guy. Goes, it's tough out there. It's really tough. I mean, Tiger. Do you remember him at Riviera? And he had, it's so cold and I can't play. And I mean, I don't know. I'm 54 and I play 36 at Cabot carrying my bag. It could be 9 degrees and rain.
Sure,
one
but
day
like you said, he was in traction. That's all I'm getting at. I'm not saying you're inherently wrong, and the more this has gone on, the more I do agree with you. But I'm curious to see if next year all the majors are warm, if he performs differently with the same schedule. And
his back may be better. Maybe it's worse than he's saying now. Although the one thing that really is a screw up too is he went to Taiwan on a family vacation and said, I just want, like...
Yeah, I can't defend that point.
He says, I just want to go home. Like, why'd you go on a vacation if you know your back's bad and you got to sleep in your own bed? Or how about this? You're a billionaire. Bring your bed wherever you go and rent a house. You know, like I don't know what that would cost.
Yeah, that point I can't disagree with at all. Yeah,
there's a little bit. It was kind of a funny year, and boy, you really noticed that. I noticed at Portrush that he didn't hit it with any conviction,
especially in the first round.
I mean, I love when Tiger's controlled and more level. I've been saying for years that dropping that head, that downward move, is what gets him stuck with the longer clubs, and I don't know why he's been so stubborn to ever take it out of there. Lots of great players hit with a level head. They don't all drop, and spring out of the turf.
More players are level than not, actually.
So, I just, he was hitting the golf ball, and I like him when he's level and more rhythmic, but it just looked like he was literally just waving at
The swings didn't look committed, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, I mean, we even see that at a level out on our teaching tee, is that people try to make changes and they try to work on their golf swings, or their buddy tells them to swing soft, and all of a sudden it looks like they're barely trying. And the thing everyone needs to understand is you do need to make sure you hit it hard enough and you let your body activate enough that you get the club on plane, that you move to the golf ball,
I tell people
right?
that all the time. You don't hit it 300 yards swinging easy. People watch Ernie Els and they say, oh, I'm swinging easier. Listen, Ernie Els has beautiful rhythm. That's
Exactly.
what your eye is seeing. That club is still moving 120 miles an hour.
Has to be, or else the ball wouldn't go that far.
So swinging easy is not a solution to anything in golf. If the only time you hit it well is when you swing super easy, it tells me you're really out of balance and off plane. And when you kind of stay more in control, you control the golf ball.
You can use it as a Band-Aid.
Swinging slower and smaller is not a solution. Anyway, that's a different topic than Tiger. He clearly wasn't just doing that.
No, but what
he just looked injured.
What I agree with you in was that conviction and the commitment to hit the ball hard wasn't there. And that, I think, especially in the wind, which I know it wasn't that windy on the first 2 days, but in the wind, that's especially damaging.
And then Phil, I mean, the craziness of the juice cleanse, and it just felt, didn't it? It felt like they were two old guys just kind of out there as part of an event, but they just weren't real competitors there. And maybe they're both just in a little injury / form funk, and they'll be back again, but bit of a changing of the guard, a bit of a...
well, to that point, this is the 83rd major that both of those guys have tipped it up at the start of the week, and it's the first time they both missed a cut in those 83 starts. So, it does feel like a changing the guard a little bit from that state.
Yeah.
I mean, Phil has said that his days of winning are coming. He can start to feel them coming to a close. I think he's starting to come to grips with that too. I think.
Last little lesson before we go. Playing in the rain, playing in the wind.
Yes.
Stay in your pre-shot routine.
Most important part.
Keep everything dry, but you've got to be really organized and systematic about it. That doesn't mean slow. Doesn't mean add 8 steps to your pre-shot routine.
No, but it means the same speed.
Correct.
Which most people struggle doing because they want to get it over with.
Most people rush a little bit and try to get it over with to get back under the umbrella or whatever. And we did see a lot of players really doing it well yesterday, where they were, I saw Patrick Reed hit a putt, and he really took his time, stepped back, got back into it. The wind was howling. The rain was pouring on him. And if you didn't look at the screen, you just saw him but not the rain. You couldn't even tell it was raining. Like, he really focused on the shot. And to be a good mutter, to play in bad conditions, you've got to be very ritualistic and rhythmic and keep your pre-shot routine the same all the time, or keep it a routine. That's redundant. Keep it like your everyday pre-shot routine. That's the best way to play.
Well, and to Reed's credit, he was one of the 2 guys in the last 12 groups that shot even, along with Finau on the day.
Yeah.
Best score in the last 12 groups. And Shane Lowry looked very much similar, right? I mean, there was guys in the press conference after commenting on the fact that he had his jacket off a bunch of times and he was in short sleeves. Clearly he wasn't letting the weather get to him. And as far as he was concerned, that's a totally fair point, that a lot of these guys are used to it, especially if you grow up there. But if you can make sure you almost consider it a non-factor and just do your normal thing, it won't hurt you as much as most people assume.
Yeah. Congratulations to the country of Ireland, more specifically, I guess, the country of Northern Ireland. Congratulations to Royal Portrush.
It showed phenomenally.
And we didn't mention Peter Dawson, who was the top guy at the Royal and Ancient, in charge of the Open Championship, who decided to bring it to Portrush. And we have to give kudos to McDowell for winning the U.S. Open, and Rory for his 4 majors, and Paddy Harrington for 3.
And Darren Clark.
And Darren Clark for winning, all of which put the spotlight of golf on Ireland, and specifically in the case of McDowell and McIlroy and Clark on Northern Ireland, and brought that tournament back to what is a top 10 course in the world, a place where golf is almost more important than breathing, everything but drinking Guinness. It's more important than everything but drinking Guinness. and just finished with a really good feeling for our final major of the year. It was awesome.
Yeah, I do. I do really mean what I said earlier, that this might be my favorite course to watch in the rotation now. Non-St. Andrews division, we'll call it. And the fact that it is so visually different than the other open courses and the collection areas are so dramatic, to me, made it incredibly fun to watch. And I'm anxious to see when it goes back there, because I love it as an open venue, and they did an immaculate job getting the course ready.
Love Shane Lowry. Learned a lot about his game. You know what I love most about his game? We got to go here, but his practice swings on his little pitch shots are exactly the same as his shots.
Yeah.
I always have a kick with people. I see them waving the club back and forth, and I say, you know why you take a practice swing,
It's to practice something.
It's to practice your swing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's right in the name there. So I love the fact, if you can rewind it, if you taped it, if you PVR'd it, and watch Shane Lowry, the practice swings are exactly the same as the actual pitch shots. Just beautiful.
And it goes
really
back
nice
to your point about making a consistent routine, right? He's committing to the routine, and he's doing what he needs to do, and whether or nerves be damned, he's going to do the same thing every time.
So happy for him. That'll do it, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another podcast. Good job today, Jake.
Thank you. Let's go recover from our early mornings.
Yeah, let's go recover from those early mornings. What time were you up? I actually watched the first shot on Thursday.
You had me by a few hours. I think I was 4 a.m. the first 2 days, and then 5 a.m. the second 2 days.
Senior Open Championship this week.
I won't be getting up for that one.
That'll do it. Have a great week, everyone.